who really knows what's going on. Thank you very much. I'm going to give you a brief presentation concerning what your guests really want. It's supposed to be like a hands-on presentation when you go back to the office tomorrow. I want to tell you how you can do monitoring and implement tools in order to help you better understand your customers. I don't know whether you use Google Apps, TripAdvisor or Facebook. If you go and visit one of these places, you get a push message. What do you think about that location? So we've got more and more data, and we as a company, regardless whether you're a hotel operator, a hotel owner, tour operator, etc., everybody of us needs to know what customers really want. Anyway.
Ja, ganz kurz zu mir. Ich bin Gründer und
Briefly talk about myself. I'm the founder and managing director of Webbosaurus GmbH. We're a full-service specialist for social media monitoring. Basically, we just look across different industries, try to look at reviews, how we can structure, rate, and analyze these reviews just to help customers generate VA, value added. I mean, this topic is not just very interesting for the hotel industry. If you look at benchmark customers, we've got anything in our testimonials. We've got airlines, consumer electronics shops, automotive insurers, but also recycling companies. You see, it's a very mixed bag. Any company where your customers has a touch point is a company where the customers write reviews. And I think for the hotel industry and tour operators, it's very important because they, again, have their specialist platforms where people write their reviews. So why are we in this business? In the digital sphere, we see a proliferation of channels: Vero, Twitter, Instagram, Google, Snapchat, Facebook. Nobody knows what's going to come tomorrow. It's very easy, very simple to implement their own blogs. Every community has their own forum. There's influencers and micro-influencers in every niche. And we, as a brand, are faced with a sea of topics and platforms which we actually don't know. So what's the problem? Actually, the problem is that 99% of consumers trust online reviews. For instance, I went to Ibis in Scotland last week, and if people read it, they believe me. They don't know me, they don't know what my idea is, what my service opinion is, so it doesn't really matter whether in reality what I say is correct or not. People just believe me, and as a brand we have a problem. I mean, with that. As you get communication for hotel brands, on the top left corner we've got Google Plus ratings, below there we've got TripAdvisor, and then we have Facebook ratings or reviews. So we've got Ibis and Novotel feedback on that. So you know that, you have your touch points with that. But sometimes you also have ratings or reviews be outside of your own profiles. For instance, somebody is at Instagram and Ibis and they say, "This is my breakfast." And you see that this is not just what 14 people liked, but one person even commented and said, "Mega, that's great." So that means you have users, you are a multiplier, and as a user, and they kind of cover certain topics. And here it says Ibis Berlin main station is more beautiful because the rooms are more beautiful, but at Potsdamer Platz people throw away more, so they're less green. And I mean, these are bizarre topics. You didn't think that people would comment on that, but anyway, these comments are on the internet forever. And what's even more, people even write in forums instead of contacting you directly. I mean, here at the Ibis hotel, you can check in. I mean, this is a question which you as a hotel would have to answer. You would have to communicate it to the customer in advance. I mean, you shouldn't have to log on as a customer onto an internet forum and ask whether you can book an Uber at Ibis, etc. So there's lots of topics, and you need to find out how you can identify and structure these different comments and questions, because these platforms, plethora of platforms, has a few problems. You have a problem, first of all, because you need to update everything. You're active on Facebook, you've got an Instagram account. That can be difficult to find the right content there and publish. things that will create more passionate fans of your existing fans, and at the same time you're faced with the following problem, i.e. the content which is not written on your own channels needs to be found by you, and that content is not structured. If I write on Twitter the hotel breakfast is lovely, and if I then post an Instagram photo with the hashtag Ibis, then this data are very difficult to compare, and it's very difficult to rate the priority of a certain forum or so. I mean, maybe a forum review is less or more precious than a tweet. So you need to monitor these platforms and analyze them continuously. I would like to give you a few pointers on how you can implement that kind of monitoring set, and I would like to share a few tools which allow you to understand the perception of your own brand, the pain points or challenges which our customers actually have. Basically, you can't make do without a tool. You won't be able to find out left to your own devices. There are two social mention, board reader, Quinly. I mean, all of these are tools. I can present them to you in detail. But there are also professional customized tools, and we are providers of them or trusted who are very relevant in the hotel rating area, etc. So basically, at one interface, you need to obtain data. So we don't have data, and the thing is, you don't get the data. It's not push. Customers don't send you an email. You need to be aware of the fact that you won't be able to do this without external help. The speaker's speaking really fast. And these are the first steps. You need to implement your own monitoring. First of all, you need to ask yourselves, what do I want to achieve? I mean, that sounds very banal, but basically we're dealing with major brands, and if we ask them, what do you want to achieve with your monitoring, then they usually say, we want to find out what people write. But actually, that is no objective. You need to ask yourselves, what do you want to do with the data? What do you want to achieve? And this is an overview of the kind of brands for which of what we do for brands. I mean, first of all, we ascertain the online reputation. What about the perception of my brand? How can I look at it across different platforms, and how can I do benchmarks? How can I evaluate this? I want to understand whether people want to find out about their competitors or competitor panel or geographical people in other geographies. What do they do better or worse than me, just in order to generate insights for myself, in order to find out what I can learn from them or the things that I should avoid. Or you could try to understand how certain campaigns are being perceived. This is what we do a lot. I mean, when it comes to beer brands, how are new brands being perceived, etc. These are areas where you don't get lots of feedback. Not many people will tell you lots of things about the brand, but if you have a hashtag, you can find out who's writing on it and how you can evaluate it. And you can also use it for risk communication. For instance, if there's a topic of a political nature or another issue, you can find out about the players, etc., who are active and talk about different issues. How can I liaise with these players, and how can I win them over again? YouTuber, for instance, this is a fitness lifestyle YouTuber, and we went to a big tour operator on Fuerteventura, and he said, this is my horror holiday on Fuerteventura, and 200,000 people watched the video, and I mean, it's snowing on that day, etc. And now I need to find out who is writing on me. Is that information real, or is it just trolls, people who actually have a problem with the brand, or how can I win them over? Or you can try to look at content marketing. For instance, you've got target groups which are in the digital sphere. For instance, if you have a target group of smaller families with with kids, etc., then you can go to forums which are active in that area, NetMoms forum or Go Family forum. So platforms which are very active in the field of your target group, and then you need to find out what the priorities are. What do they want to achieve when they go on a family holiday? What do they want to achieve when it comes to travel planning? And later on, You can find out what the customer will be, who is going to arrive on your doorstep, and the content that you communicate to these people. So you can come up with ideas how you can cater better to your target group and how you can provide better information to your target group. Or you can do this in a more structured way, stronger way. You can zoom in, take a look at who is my target group, for instance, ITB, etc., or LGBT, sorry. And I can find out about product optimization, identify trends. Anything that you can do in the digital sphere is created very quickly and is usually a flash in the pan. I mean, it's maybe there for 2 or 3 weeks, created overnight, and in your day-to-day business, you're lucky if you just wake up to that trend, and then maybe it's uncharted territory. You try to develop community content which doesn't really work, or you post videos which are no longer up to date. So the thing is, first of all, you need to find out what do I want to do with the data which I want to find. And then the second thing is, where do I find the data? If I want to find shoes, maybe you enter red shoes or shoe size 5. And this is exactly what you need to do here. Search terms which might lead me to the data which I want to find on the internet. We make a differentiation between brand and topic monitoring. In brand, you enter anything that is corporate names, corporate name, product, competitor's name, can be branches, can be managing directors who may be in the political crosshairs, or press releases, or suppliers. That means if you were active in Turkey as a tour operator, it's interesting to find out what the local hotels are doing, or what the political rating is of certain environments, or whether there's natural disasters in that area. Precious information for your valued customers. And you might think about stuff your customers might look for, and then things you might want to look for yourself. And then topic. Let's get back to monitoring. You may wonder about topics which are relevant for your customer, like LGBT or family trip to Berlin or World Cup or whatever, or Christopher Street Day. So you just need to think about the possible holiday ideas with which my customers arrive at their hotel, or what are the desires that motivate my customers in order to, during their travel planning. And you can think about different issues of the target group. Anything that you do in your day-to-day strategic operational business will be verified and validated by you inevitably again. And you can also think about the perception of different product groups. That does not mean that you monitor all the different branches, but you find out what about family holiday, surf holiday, either because they want to offer surf holidays themselves, or because they have 5-6 hotels on Fuerteventura, or they shuttle to and fro 2 or 3 times a day with an aircraft. And in Berlin, for instance, in Cologne, you can have a look at the topical events. Go to a business traveler forum where all the onliners are, and just check what do they do when there is an event, when they're in town, etc. And what do people write who are today at ITB? Just have a look at their profile, look at their preferences and desires, and does the Wi-Fi work, or do they have any other issues? And these are terms which I need to identify as search terms and determine in order to find the relevant contributions. And you need to find out about the relevant platforms. In our tool, we have 300 million sources, 390 languages, lots of countries. So all of this is very difficult to just enter a question and say, well, I will search every source. On Twitter, for instance, we have 280 signs, and that is very fast-lived, so very short-lived. If you want to find out about the preferences of family with child in summer holidays, then you probably come to the conclusion Twitter is not really worthwhile, because people don't really communicate with each other. You probably have to think about reports in blogs, discussions in technical forums, and maybe Q&A portals. Q&A portals is where you put a question and guys start to discuss. So you need to think about the goals, the search terms, and where I can find that data. And many people say social media monitoring, Facebook and Twitter That's just Facebook and Twitter. And Facebook is really on the decline. You can hardly find anything here. So actually, you really need to think twice about where you can find the content. Of course, you can go to a hotel rating platform or video platform in order to find out about the trending issues, things that are written about right now. So you have search entries and platforms and lots of ideas in the back of your minds. And then you need to think about how you can translate it into the tool so the tool understands what you want. For instance, I want to show you a tool. And if you enter the question, I want to know what families would like to know, then you need to translate your search into technical jargon. There's a couple of tools or assistants. The biggest benefit that we have is the so-called Boolean operators, logical operators. Or connectors, we can compress things, it's always good to include and exclude words. I mean, with cruises, for instance, there's lots of people who want to sell stuff through third parties. This is not really relevant. You can prepare black and white lists. So these are platforms which are allowed, the platforms which are not allowed, and this allows you to adjust your databases which will be searched. And it makes sense to keep a generic search and then filter it later on. The more specific you question, the more difficult it becomes. But if you put a generic question and just limit the number of sources which will be where the search will run, then that gives you a better result. I mean, here we have a couple of Boolean operators. So the biggest, most important operator is the near operator. This is, for instance, that we look for IBIS near 5 Potsdamer, and all of this needs to be found within 5 word groups. So maybe the customer is at the IBIS in Potsdamer Platz, is in front of the IBIS at Potsdamer Platz. It just goes to show that we don't need to think about thousands of things. So we get a near operator and we find a cluster. We very often use the wildcard operator, for instance. And I'm not sure about the spelling. I don't know whether I write a word with double E or T, etc. And that uses the laziness of the people in the digital sphere. I mean, people have autocorrect, and here with wildcard search, you really have an advantage. For instance, if you don't know whether Mercure is written with an E at an end, and it makes sense to enter exact search. In this case, IBIS budget. If you put quotation marks before and after IBIS budget, then that's really helpful. It will find exactly that. Or are there any empty spaces like 25 hours? How can you write it with or without empty spaces? Or, you really need to think about possible mistakes customers might make. And people write badly, have autocorrect, and that's a big problem, and they write fast. So always try to include typos. Let's stick with Mercure, for instance. For instance, if you're writing it on a mobile phone, maybe it is turned in German into Merkur with a K. So always think about potential typos of your brand. And when people write something in their free time, in their leisure time, they don't really wonder about the correct spelling of a brand. So always think about possible mistakes the customers might make, and look at the most frequent typos people make when looking for a certain brand. What does this mean? So that means you defined your searches, you translated your searches into technical language, and now you need to enter it into some kind of tool. And over the next 2-3 minutes, I would like to share a couple of tools which are free of charge. You can use them tomorrow just to find out in order what's written about you. And these tools will help you do your work, or do the work for you. Even though it's not 100% fitting at Facebook, you can create notifications. And we have many customers who don't use the notifications, and here you can really select ever so easily You can specify that you just want to have site ratings. You can create a cockpit here where you get notifications on the latest ratings. So if you don't have a tool yourself, Facebook, for instance, maybe you plan a post once a week, just take the notification options available in Facebook and activate the notification to see what kind of push messages you get automatically from Facebook. And then Twitter, I can use the extended search, and that's very helpful. It's very easy, and that kind of gives you a visual display of what I just showed you, explained to you. I mean, get a word and then build your own search, and that is what it looks like. Afterwards, you can subscribe to that search, and you will get email notifications. So just look at the tool, a search tool at Twitter, prepare a search, and then create an email alert. So whenever anything new is written on it, you will get an automatic email alert. Anybody using TweetDeck? TweetDeck is a management tool where you have different columns, and if you've optimized your search, you can enter it there. So it's like a live dashboard and gives you the latest contributions. Very fast means of information. Instagram. Unfortunately, Instagram is not too good when it comes to free tools. So you can either follow hashtags. Unfortunately, you can only do this on the app, but actually you just check the hashtags your customers use when they log on to your site, and then when you link that to a new account, maybe to the corporate, create a new corporate account just to follow that, then you have your very own stream for the search entries, which are defined by you there. And it becomes slightly more problematic when you want to Twitter or tweet locations. So maybe it makes sense to bookmark it, and then you see the latest contribution. So it's not quite as easy here. I mean, that's the problem, that Instagram doesn't give you that many opportunities to achieve something in the free of charge area in the public domain. Board Reader, that's a free tool, forum tool. Fairly strong, fairly good coverage, and here you get an idea of what people are writing in the forums. And forums is just a community where like-minded people talk about the same topics. And maybe you will be mentioned in a forum which are not necessarily specific for you. Maybe in a hardware or computer forum, there will be a contribution on travel, because people will also talk about that. I mean, Tringly is another free of charge blog search, aggregates lots of different blogs. Of course, blogs contain lots of nonsense, but it gives you a good idea. Here, they also have an advanced search. But when you play around with it, you can find out how you can optimize the search. And Social Mention is a meta aggregation program, and that means they tap lots of different sources. It's not 100% accurate, but it definitely gives you a good opportunity to get an aggregated view of what users write about your brand. So that means you need to monitor individually all relevant platforms for you, and in the ideal world, you will then create, based on that, email alerts. So in your Outlook or whatever email client you're using, you will see that something new has been written about you, and in order to prioritize it for you personally, you need to respond it. I mean, maybe somebody has a bad bug and writes it on Twitter, so you need to respond straight away and maybe take remedial action. Now you have the various contributions that are sent. Maybe you can access them through an application protocol interface if you're slightly more savvy, but the data are not structured. Nobody knows whether they're positive, negative, or neutral, but that means you need to code these contributions. So you can either do this manually in terms of service, this is positive, do you type it into an Excel sheet, or if you have more machine power, you can do this through machine learning or filter rules. But in our experience, I mean, unless you're working for a big brand, you can do this quite quickly manually. You can code, read contribution, and then come up with a code. Now, this is a contribution from real life, what this could look like. And here you see the different ratings, which we define for the customers with lots of different impacts, just to find out for every individual's customer how we can code customers, how we can code users in order to use data for learning purposes. What does this mean? You're left with the data, aggregated data. You saved it maybe in an Excel file and run a filter. You analyze the data, and now you need to analyze the contribution. Basically, I need to understand metrics which are interesting. Is it just the social buzz, the total number of contributions? Is it the mood? Is it the development of different priority topics? And let me give you one example from our hands-on experience. How we resolve this. This is a dashboard which we create for the customer. This is in the case DR touristic, different brands here, LTI, Kui, and lots of different branches, Setup Place, Deutsche Vita, and Wipse. And we try to aggregate this and tell the customers what the latest contribution says. And AA is positive and green, and the other one is negative. And this is the kind of dashboard you need to find for yourselves, which you control through the programs in order to see the relevant contributions. And if you do the coding correctly, then you see fairly quickly what the people are talking about, your customers are talking about. Here, for instance, somebody wrote a review, incredible, don't touch it. And this is something which should send a red flag to you as a brand. But afterwards, you should, for instance, double check, why did people have such a bad experience with booking? And then if you say want to take this one step further and not just operationally look at topics, then you visualize it through a tech cloud. You can do this yourself. There's various tools where you enter the words and you will get visualized information. And here you get a clear idea of the existing pain points of your customers, and you need to have a look at that every month or every week in order to find out what your customers' problems are. Green is positive, red is negative. You also see negative information which is mentioned in a positive context. In that case, maybe the customer has a good room but had a problem with service because people always wanted to have a tip. And of course, this is something which shouldn't happen. It happened in Thailand or Turkey, but here again, you see the pain points of your customers, which maybe the customer didn't mention to you because the general experience was possible. And this is something that you always need to visualize, always need to present in order to really find out what the customer wants. Here you can see customers are very happy with the room, very clean, very neat room, wonderful for kids, anticipatory joy, etc., but also lots of negative or some negative stores. So the more data you have, the more data you can analyze. Maybe if you do this for 1 year, then you have 2,000 different data sets and you really find out about the customer problems. What does this mean? This means that you need to prepare regular reportings and implement the workflow for companies. And at the end of the day, you also need to use these tools. I mean, it's no good if you continue to have bookings. And in terms of the workflow, you need to have a look at what's going on with the negative ratings. If you've got a negative feedback on the breakfast, how do you take remedial action here? How do you make sure that positive feedback on housekeeping will be put on display? Because your members of staff are very happy if you get positive feedback, guest feedback. It's good for staff morale. And you can also use it for management purposes. And the data, the insights, of course, need to be used further, so they're not an end unto themselves. And of course, at the end of the day, you're happy. And mission completed. You invested such a lot of labor, you've got the data, etc. But unfortunately, it's not the end of the story. If you look at that timeline, then first of all, you need to identify the targets, you need to identify search entries, the sources, you need to collate the data, prepare the data, analyze the data. And then, unfortunately, this process starts all over again. So you always need to, it's like a closed loop. You always need to double check yourself. Do we still use the same search entries? Do we still use the right platforms? Because this is so short-lived and things constantly change. So at the end of the day, you need to prepare a reporting for yourselves. You need to think about what you want to do for yourselves. And of course, there is no ready-made tool which is just going to deal with the work for you. So you need to invest labor. And you need to have a look at the data, because the visualization, regardless of the quality of the data, is so important. The data itself is no use. You need to understand what your customers want. So basically, you need to report every platform individually and think about whether there's joint features or specifications. So you need one reporting per platform. And and regular reportings, and think about monitoring the rate KPI on a daily basis, guest rating, the number of five-star ratings, etc. And you need to come up with performance indicators, which indeed are important, but not that important that you need to have a look at them on a daily basis, but rather weekly basis. Anything beyond that needs to be looked at on a monthly or yearly basis. So you can say, okay, the number of ratings is important, or the mood of customers is important for me. This is what I want to have a look at on a daily basis. Anything else is irrelevant. So prioritize. And maybe I've been able to inspire you with one or two ideas how you can find reviews for your brand, for your hotels, in order to find out more about what your customers really want.